I think we have 15 minutes, so we will keep it, keep it moving. First of all, congratulations. Um, I know when we talked earlier, you said, hey, I'm getting too much attention. Let's deflect it a little bit, but the attention is all warranted. Um, you started with Tech for Good at a very young age. I mean, you started teaching at Stanford when you were still doing your undergrad. What was the motivation? What kind of moved you in that direction? Kind of what moved you to get going in that space?
So I think one, so happy to be back here. I was right, I think almost a year ago at the DeepTech Club uh, talking about the work we're doing, which is very exciting. I think that technology has this dramatic ability to create large-scale impact. And when I think about the power tech has to create impact to tackle large-scale social inequities, it's just very, very exciting, right? I grew up in one of the poorer parts of Delhi in a place called Shakur Basti. And my infatuation with technology started very early because it was the only thing that was making life better, where I grew up. And I think that I decided to pursue computer science because I felt that if we could democratize the benefits of technology and bring it to communities that we have left behind, we have this huge opportunity to create large-scale impact. And I think that's what I felt inspired to do. And in India, we're in a very lucky position that we're not the only ones thinking about this, right? So I joined Microsoft Research as a research fellow right after graduation because there's a team there called Technology for Emerging Markets that just does the most incredible work. And of course, India has always had a very, very active ecosystem about tech for good. And I think I just felt like I could belong there and build impactful technologies for people and communities we have left behind, right? And if I think about the power of tech to create impact, one of the things that technology solves really well is information asymmetry, right? It is ridiculous that in 2023, information asymmetry is still a problem, right? Just because all of us speak English, we have access to all of the world's information, and people with a lot more talent and opportunity, a lot more talent and intellect than I have, do not receive that opportunity because they just didn't speak English, right? And I think I find it absurd that in 2023, a full 40 years after Windsurf declared, the end of information asymmetry with the creation of the internet, we still have that problem, right? So
fair enough.
I think that's very exciting to work with tech to tackle.
Yeah, no, that's great. And, I think the journey has, you're rightly pointing out, I mean, a lot of the factors that exist in India in terms of the language barriers, etc. And the benchmark that people are measured against is very different than what they could be potentially measured against that will be to their advantage to a large extent. Maybe spend first of all, I think thanks for pointing out the fact that you're a Deep Tech Club company, again, a phenomenal example of the 300 plus companies that we have, and you have certainly stood out. Maybe we'll spend a little bit of time talking about what Kriya does before we get into that space, go deeper. What were some of the, kind of the triggers for starting a company in AI, kind of bringing in a rural population into AI? I mean, some of the examples we've heard this morning are really some really strong and inspiring examples of use of AI. But you're even one level, kind of before people start using AI, right? So maybe we'll talk a little bit about the company itself and what you're doing.
Absolutely. So karya is the Sanskrit word for work that gives dignity, right? The idea is your life has karya and akarya. Karya is work that gives to you, akarya is work that takes from you, right? And I think as people with the privilege, of choosing what to do, right? We have the agency to choose what we do. I wanted to somehow democratize that privilege to a lot of people. So that's how Karya, the name comes about. We started at Microsoft Research as a research project. And the question was, can we use technology to sustainably tackle poverty, right? Like I came back from Stanford in 2017, traveled across the country, went to over 1,000 villages with, listening to what Tilakji said, like decades ago. Whenever you travel to rural India, keep your eyes open, ears open, mouth closed, because you're here to learn, right? And that's what I did. I just went village to village and I learned. And everywhere I went, I saw people were tackling symptoms of poverty, which is important and incredibly important that we do that, right? People were giving healthcare and education and electricity and food and water, and we need to do all of that. But I felt the ecosystem to make poor people less poor, right, was not as vibrant, right? I saw a lot of skilling nonprofits that we're doing amazing work, but it's really hard to skill so many people, right? India is a continent masquerading as a country, right? We have 19,000 different languages, 230 million poor people. So can I somehow bypass skilling by giving people money for a skill they already have, like their languages? And that's where we got very lucky, because in 2017, when we started this work, India was finally at the cusp of the digital revolution, right? Like millions of Indians were getting smartphones, data was getting cheaper, internet connections happening. And despite all of these amazing digital infrastructure things, India still today is the world's poorest country by number of poor people. 230 million poor people, 1 in 3 people who are poor globally live here. And that should just not be the case, right? I always say I want my generation to be the last generation that knows of poverty in India. So what we did was looked at AI as a way of moving people out of poverty. We do it very simply. Every year, big tech companies spend billions of dollars collecting training data for their AI models. And we decided to bring that work to rural communities. And I always explain it with a story of the first person that we employed. She is from a tribal community in Western India. She looked at the smartphone and said, "Iske andar Surya Dev hai," or is the sun god inside this? Because this was a village with no electricity, right? And I had the intelligence not to say anything. Like I didn't say, "Oh, maybe she can't do this work," but I had doubt on my face, and she registered that doubt. 30 minutes later, she came back and she said, "Why do you think this is hard?" Right? Because she had understood how to use the smartphone, and the task itself was reading out sentences in her mother tongue to build a language model. By herself. We didn't do anything, just brilliant person. And in the first week, she made 10,000 rupees, which was more money than her family had made all of last year, right? And a few weeks after that, she decided she wanted to go to college. She became the first girl from her community to go to college. And today, that's a very normal thing in that village because someone set the path, right? And I think that money is a great, it's the first step on a pathway out of poverty. And I think AI gives us the best opportunity we have today to dramatically move a lot of people out of poverty quickly.
Do you see more women taking to this than men, or do you see, is there any differentiation there that you're able to create more, more livelihood for people of a certain type? Or?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we see interest across all genders,
Okay.
but I think within Karya, there's of course a mandate to employ as many women as possible because it allows us to uplift economies. I mean, there's so much research on this. We don't need to like it's pretty.
No, the
evident.
reason I ask you that is I was on a panel maybe a year ago, and one of the panelists mentioned that when they employ a woman in the family, they tend to actually improve the entire family or the almost the surrounding around them rather than.
And I have so many funny stories about this. Early in 2017, we would knock doors and we would try to get people to get on the platform when nobody knew about Karya in the villages. And I knocked someone's door and this person said, "Oh, my wife doesn't do work," right? And the way he said it in Hindi was so crass. I usually do not lose my temper, but the way he said it was so crass. I said, "Sure," I basically just went away. And I think the FOMO kicked in the way I responded. And he said, "Okay, she can try, but she won't be able to do it." Of course she did it, right?
Yeah.
Within 2 weeks, again, she had made a lot of money. She made 10,000 rupees. The next time I went to that house, she was sitting on the sofa, both legs up, doing Karya work. And I kid you not, he was cooking chai in the kitchen. This is something we saw. And
Well, I think phenomenal. I think great story. Thank you.
I always say, it's a joke, but the easiest way to make a man a feminist is make his wife make more money than him, right? And I think that by the way power percolates in society is by who has wealth. And if we can change that and redistribute wealth to communities that have been systematically kept away from opportunity, which is the women of this country, which is historically marginalized communities across caste, across economic opportunities. It is really, really important that we do that. And thankfully at Karya, we have an amazing group of leaders who take a look at this and make sure we are doing that.
Great, fantastic, congratulations. Manu, when we were chatting offline, you were talking about this, there's a movement now in rural India. It's not just Karya, but there's a number of companies starting to play around this. So let me combine the two questions that I had. One is that what are you seeing? What's your roadmap? And what are the roadmaps of other companies that you're seeing starting to do this? And what's your message to potential entrepreneurs in this room, or those who will watch this video later, about getting into this space, because there is, you're not doing it purely as a non-profit. There is a profit model built in. There are companies looking in the social impact space. What do you see with AI and rural India, and what do you see is happening today, and what do you think is going to happen?
I mean, it's a very exciting time, and I think that, there's almost like an AI renaissance that's happening, right? Like, if you think about, there's just so much incredible work. You look at the work that Microsoft Research is doing, in bringing these AI technologies to people. You look at what Rocket Learning, which is an amazing nonprofit here in Bangalore, is doing in building, LLMs for early childhood education. You look at what Arman is doing in Mumbai based on, building chatbots for healthcare workers to train them better. I mean, it's an endless list. You look at what Maina Mahila is doing in Mumbai based on like sexual health and reproductive health, right? So fundamentally, what AI does is it is the best shot we have to tackle information asymmetry. If I can just turn to my phone and ask a question, if I can just say, in a healthcare case, मैं ठीक तो हो जाऊंगा ना, will I get better, right? And get a response back in my mother tongue, which is medically accurate and more accessible to me than, say, reading a book about that or calling a physical person. I think that is very, very exciting, right? And I think that that is the power of AI that we are seeing today. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from Kentaro Toyama, who was, the first director of Microsoft Research, where he says technology is an excellent amplifier of human intent and capacity, right? Having done this work for 6 years, I believe strongly that across India there is intent to get out of poverty. There's intent to receive better education. There's intent, and we know this is not news, and we know that our people have the capacity to do this. So then technology can be an excellent amplifier, but it's always AI plus human, just to make sure that is very clear, right? So if they are incredible teachers, AI can make the teacher's job a little easier, right? And I think that little easier makes our work more accessible. And I think that's the future that we see, which is very, very exciting. And I think my message to the people in the room would be, we are in a very lucky space, right? The amount of good work happening in India today is deeply inspiring, right? You look at, from the government with Bhashani, that they are doing, right? It's such a privilege to have schemes that exist today to make to reduce the information asymmetry gap, to build the AI building blocks that we desperately need. Or you look at what for-profit companies are doing across Googles and Microsofts of the world, to look at what startups are doing, here at Nasscom, to look at what non-profits are doing, to what academics are doing with IISc and the IITs, right? It's almost like there's a tsunami of good work happening, and it's, rising tide raises all the boats. It's a great time to create your own boat here and think about how you want to create impact, because that rising tide will help all of us. And I think this is the best shot we've had to create large-scale impact, because that underlying infrastructure now exists. We do have to be careful that this tide carries all of us equally. So we do not repeat the mistakes of the previous tech wave, right?
Very great. Great message. Manu, I think one of the recurring themes this morning across all the startups who were up on the stage, right from the beginning of the session, has been around some of the challenges on two fronts. One is patient capital to build these kinds of companies. If the returns are not going to happen tomorrow, this is not typical of some of the SaaS startups, etc. The second one that came up was talent availability. Do you want to address those 2 points from your end? And not just for you, but as you look about this sector of companies.
It's a real problem, right? So India's philanthropic ecosystem is $13 billion a year, which is tiny. It's 1/35th of the US philanthropic ecosystem, which is $500 billion a year. Though the Indian economy is not 1/35th of the US economy, India also has a lot more people than the US and 6 times the number of people in poverty, right? So a lot of Indian impact organizations end up going to international organizations for aid. Which is something that you see across sector and is needed, because there is a gap here. I see a lot of endeavors like Giving Pie and Dasra doing something to change that. I know Nasscom Foundation does amazing work, right? So patient capital is an issue, especially with impact startups and impact organizations. We see that's changing slowly over time. My recommendations always use the market well. So at Karya, we are happy that we use the market. So we break even on every project. So we need very limited philanthropic capital, and that's always only to build team capacity. So I think that's an important measure. Talent, I don't see any issues, very honestly. Like, I think there's just so much talent in the country. It's almost like awe-inspiring what Indians are capable of. And whether it's AI talent, impact talent, like you name it, we got it. We just need to inspire people to like lead this life of impact, which I know many people in this room hopefully will. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Manu. Thanks very much. Very informative session. I think last 18 seconds, you have anything more that you want to mention
No,
to people?
just so grateful to Nasscom for this. I mean, like DTC, this was the first event that that I ever represented Karya, and that was exactly a year ago. And I remember I met Debjani ma'am for the first time, and I was just like speaking. I lost my voice by the end of the day because it was 2 days. I think the DTC thing, right? Like NPC last year,
Correct.
and it was from 8 in the morning to I think 4 p.m. And I think I was just speaking both the days. And I remember that going to the lobby and just ordering ginger tea. So I was really, just really grateful for everything that Nasscom has done for the tech ecosystem. I don't think the ecosystem would be where it is without, you guys. And
Thank you.
I think all of us in the room are grateful and so inspired.
Thank you. And I think it makes it all worth it when companies like you and others, step up and bat above your weight class.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.